Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a video that is all about my series reading. So I just want to go through all of the series that I'm in the middle of and a series that I own but haven't started with yet. I'm sorry if you can hear my fan. I know it sounds like we're about to take off into outer space, but it's really hot. I need it on. I have tried to make a list. I'm not going to say that my list is 100% accurate of all of the series that I am in the middle of, particularly if I'm thinking about things that are on ebook, but I am not really trying to wrap up any series here, so I'm not going to talk about any series that I have completed, and I am also not going to talk about any series that I have lended out from the library or Kindle Unlimited, because in its own way Kindle Unlimited is a library. My main concern is with books and series that I own, and so those can be on ebook, but for the most part I am really concerned with my physical TBR, so I want to assess how many series I am in the middle of and how many series I own, but that I have yet to start. The majority of these are, of course, fantasy. I guess some of them, though, you might more accurately term romance. But again, if I've had it out from the Kindle library, I am not going to include it here because I think I have often turned things back into Kindle Unlimited. And since I don't feel like I technically own those books, because you don't, you're getting them out of a lending library, I don't really want to include them. This is more for me to know what I own and to kind of assess what is on my shelves. But particularly since I've gotten these new shelves, I have been a little bit overwhelmed by what I have. And so I think it'll be fun to go through this. I thought we could separate this into sections and maybe start with series that I own but that I have not yet started with, and then we can go through my stack of series that I am in the middle of. And I think we might make some tough decisions and we can DNF some of these. After checking my list, I don't think that I own the first book in any series on Kindle that I have not yet tackled, which is so great for me. I'm really proud of myself. So I think everything that I own that is a series that I haven't yet started is something that I own physically. So let's go on and get into this list. The first of these is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I have DNF'd this book, so if you remember me talking about it, yes, I did in fact start this. Maybe I should have included it on the other stack. I DNF'd this because it put me in a really bad mood, and yet immediately after I DNF'd it, immediately after I posted the video in which I talked about why I DNF'd it, this suddenly became the darling of the internet. And so now everyone is obsessed with this. Everyone is talking about how great it is. So maybe I just really need to come back to this. I didn't want to get rid of it because I did feel like I might one day be in the mood for something this solemn. But to me, this was really depressing. But I think since everyone is really loving it, that's encouraging me. I really wonder why it's this one of all of Rebecca Ross's books to go big. I'm really shocked that it's this one because to me her first duology is just so good. But this one is on my TBR and is actually quite high on my TBR since the second book comes out at the end of the year. Speaking of Rebecca Ross, I have the entire duology, Fire Endless. I'm not actually sure what the first book was called because I've lent that out, but that is also a book that I started reading and I DNF'd, but I was in just a massive reading slump. This is kind of a Scottish inspired series that also has some mystery elements present. So I'm really excited about that. I feel like what I recall was that I really liked the vibe, and I think Rebecca Ross really likes a Scottish vibe. She often chooses kind of Scottish elements to incorporate in her books. So this is also an adult book, and I think the majority of what she has written has been YA, but this is a duology. It's complete, so I don't really know why I'm letting this sit around on the TBR. Here is a book that I believe I hauled in a vlog 2 or 3 years ago, and that is The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first book in a trilogy. Many of y'all have told me over the years that I would absolutely love Anthony Ryan just because he apparently has a very beautiful and lyrical writing style. So I am interested in this one. I've thought about unhauling it a few times just because I really wasn't sure if I was in the mood for adult fantasy anymore. But I tell you what, this year has been very heavy on adult fantasy for me. I have really been enjoying it. So this is possibly one that I would say is a higher priority for me going into the fall. We have The Stardust Thief, which is another first book in a trilogy that I think is also adult fantasy. I picked this up because I really love desert fantasy, and I've heard mixed things about this. Immediately when this one came out, most of the things I heard were incredibly positive. But since then, I have heard a lot of people say that they just decided not to carry on with this, that they weren't really all that interested in it, which I think is interesting. So this is one that has also been up on the chopping block for me a time or two. I have constantly thought about getting rid of it. It's another one that I've started and never gotten further in, so I probably should have had a section that was all about DNFs. But I don't want to consider a book a DNF if I put it down when I was feeling slumpy. And if I recall, that was definitely the case with this one. A book that haunts me at night, Empire of the Vampire. I have had this on multiple TBRs. I pre-ordered this book. I want y'all to know that. And I really don't know at this point why I have never committed to this one. This is just really long, I think, is a lot of my problem. But now this also is in Kindle Unlimited. So I've gotten it out of the Kindle Unlimited library. It's downloaded on my Kindle. I feel like that may be the only way that I'm comfortable tackling this one. So this is one that has definitely haunted me over the years. And I think every time I feel like I'm going to read it, I tell myself to save off until the spooky season. And that has happened to me for the past 2 years now. I have saved it off and then never gotten around to it. The fall is often a really hectic time for reading, and I can't fit everything in. So I think this one goes by the wayside just purely because of its length. We have The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. This is also the first in a trilogy, but this is a historical fiction trilogy that is about sex workers in Pompeii before Mount Vesuvius erupts. And I got this because I thought we were going to go into the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. I have no idea if that's really the intent of the series or not. But this is one I truly have not yet started. I also feel like I pre-ordered this a couple of years ago, and I've thought about picking it up since many times, especially this year, but I've just told myself to wait until I knew the last book was out. And I also thought at one time I was going to go to Pompeii, and I really wanted to save this to read on the trip. And that never materialized. I've never been to Pompeii, and thus I've never read this book. So this is one that I would say I also want to make a higher priority. A lot of people tend to really love this, but I think it's also very heavy. It deals with some very heavy topics. So I'm intrigued by this one, but it will be, I think, a while before I get into it. Let's hope that this next one is the last of the books that I have DNF'd, and that is Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I pre-ordered this one as well. This is the first book in a duology, and this DNF came very far into the process. I believe I was 150, 200 pages in. I was just in a general reading slump though, so I really, again, don't want to fault the book for that, but I'll be real with you. This has been one that I have thought about coming back to, and every time I remember the reading experience, there was something about it that really frustrated me. This is an adult fantasy, but it really read YA, and I think the character made a lot of stupid decisions, it seems like, the main character, and I just find that so hard to deal with now in a way that I didn't used to. And it felt like that was the entire plot, was someone telling her what's really going on and what you should do, and her just willfully going against that. But at the same time, I have always felt like I would really, really like it. So I'm definitely keeping this one around. Now the second book is out. Again, I feel like this is one I should probably get to very soon. We have She Who Became the Sun. This is, I think, the first in a duology. Maybe it's going to be a trilogy. This has not been on my physical TBR that long, so I'm not going to feel that bad about it. This is a book that I picked up this year, and I intentionally waited to pick it up until I knew the second book was out. I am getting so bad at that, and I've been really bad at it for the past few years. But I guess now when you read so many books, especially when you read so many series, it's very difficult to keep track of things. It's just very difficult for me to remember what happened in which book. So I'm now at the point where I kind of want to binge read series while they're fresh in my mind, and that never used to be me. And so I definitely wanted to wait with this one until the second book came out. This is historical fantasy, I believe, and it is kind of a Mulan retelling. So this is one I've heard mixed things about, but I feel like I'm personally really going to love it. I do have 2 light novels here. One of them is Heaven's Official Blessings. Okay, yes, I know everyone is a major fan of this, and I feel like I'm also going to be a major fan of this. The reason that I have not yet started this series is that it is super, super long. I can't remember now how many books they have broken this up into, but it is something like 14. And really the reason why I didn't start it, because I'm kind of okay with a 14-book series. I just really didn't want to get involved in the story because, to my knowledge, light novels will end on a fairly big cliffhanger. Like, they will end in the middle of a section, in the middle of a story, and they are not going to give you kind of a resolution. It's going to be assumed that you're going to move into the next one. This series, especially because it was at one time a web novel, so there was no ending point like this, or at least that's my understanding. And so I didn't really want to get involved in this and get obsessed and then have to automatically buy the next few books, because it was definitely going to leave off in the middle. But this is one that everyone loves, so I feel like I'm also really going to love it. We also have Raven of the Inner Palace. This is also a light novel, but it's a much shorter series than Heaven's Official Blessings. I think this is only 3 books so far, and that may be all it's intended to be. But this also sounds really, really good. It is about the Raven consort, who I believe is kind of witchy and maybe even a little bit evil. So I think I'm probably really going to like this. I have been saving this for a rainy day because I just felt like it would be a lighter read than a lot of what I read. So it felt like it would be a good thing to break up heavier reads with. We have Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. Okay, this is the last one, I promise you. This is the last one that I have DNF'd. This was unintentional. I was reading this and put it down one day and just never picked it up again. So I'm not going to blame myself on this one. This is a Chinese-inspired YA fantasy, and the world was really interesting to me. It seems like the world building was just fascinating, and I was really into the magic system. It was really, really dense, and I think I was trying to read it when I had a lot going on. This just wasn't the book for that. We have 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This is also the first in a duology, and I feel like I'm probably going to like this, but a lot of people who have given this a poor review have just said that it reads very young. And I think that will probably be my problem with it if I have an issue with it at all, that I'm probably going to think it reads a bit more like middle grade than YA. And I'm not normally a big fan of middle grade, sadly enough. So we'll see how this one goes. That's really why this one is still on the TBR, is that I thought it might read a little bit young for me. So this is one that I'm still really intrigued by, and I think I'll probably really like. It's based on one of my favorite fairy tales. But I do think it probably won't become a favorite, so that's really why it has sat on the TBR for so long. We have The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. I picked this up used, I think, a few years ago, and this is another that has sat on the chopping block before. I have thought about unhauling this many times, but there's something about it that does really intrigue me. Again, I feel like last year, and even the year before, I was just telling myself that I'm not really into adult fantasy anymore. But this year, I have been massively into adult fantasy. So I didn't want to get rid of it knowing that I was kind of in an adult fantasy mood. But this is also a series that is currently ongoing, and I don't know when it is projected to finish up. I read the back cover of this when I took it down, and I said, ooh, this sounds really intriguing. I know now why I picked it up. So this is one that's maybe not a top priority, but I'm still really intrigued by it. This is one in particular, if you've read it, I would love to know your feelings on it down below. Okay, a book that I literally just picked up yesterday is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I know I'm going out on a limb here because I have historically never liked her. I have never liked Naomi Novik's writing, and I don't really know what it was about this that really called to me. Since this trilogy has finished up, I have heard so many positive reviews of it, but it seems like this first book got a lot of hype, and then I heard next to nothing about the other 2. But now that it's finished, suddenly everyone is binge reading it and saying that it's really great. This is a dark academia style trilogy that is about a school that is trying to kill the students. And so if you survive that, you get to graduate. Graduation is the fact that you survived this magical school. But what really intrigues me about it is people have said the magic system has to do with languages, like you're more powerful magically if you can speak multiple different languages, and I think that sounds really interesting. So this is one that I just picked up. I'm not going to feel that bad about it sitting on my TBR for a little while, but I'm really excited and I want to keep that momentum up, so this might be one that I start pretty immediately. I also own Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. I don't know what it is about this one. This is also really big, but I have had hit and miss experiences with Victoria Aveyard, and I think that's kind of why this one has sat around. But again, it's a long series that only a couple of books are out in, and I think I was waiting until I knew the second book was out, but I think the third book's not coming out until the end of next year. So I don't know if I'll start this until then. I might just wait around on this one. Why don't we go into series that I am in the middle of? So these are series that I have read at least one book in, and some of them I think we're going to make the hard call with right now, and we're just going to call it a DNF. The first of these is The Last White Rose by Alison Weir. This started a new series for her. This is a historical fiction series that is about the Tudor period, and I think the second book has just come out, and it's about Henry VIII. I picked this up because it was about Elizabeth of York. That was the only reason that I wanted to read it, and I got what I wanted out of it. I had a fun ride. I vlogged it. It was a great time all around, but honestly, it was a pretty forgettable book. I tend to enjoy Alison Weir's historical fiction, but this one just wasn't it for me. Her earlier historical fiction, I really enjoyed far more than this. I felt like this was choppily written, and I feel like if how this is written is any indication of the series as a whole, it's probably for the best that I don't move on with it. So I'm gonna say this is a DNF, but you never know. We have The Barsetshire Chronicles by Anthony Trollope. I've only read one book in this, the first book, The Warden, which was really short. It was enjoyable, but it has never been a high priority for me to move on with this series. This is very much like an interconnected series. I don't think it's a series that really builds upon each book that you need to have read in order, but you're going to get more out of it if you have done that. The sad truth is, I just don't know that Anthony Trollope is for me. Every time I have tried to read the majority of his books, I have been bored by them, and so I just don't know that he is my author. I don't want to call this a DNF because I do actually own all the rest of the books in this series, and so it's definitely one that I could continue on with at any time. Still, I don't think I'm going to call this one a failure. Let's just say this is on pause for the time being. We have These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and to a bigger extent, just in general, her Shanghai series. This is a series that I honestly believed I had finished. This is a duology that I honestly believed I had finished, but I have not yet read the second book in this duology, and so I can't move on with the rest of the Shanghai world until I finish this out. This is kind of a top priority for me because I just finished another book by Chloe Gong that we will get to in this list that I absolutely loved. I was obsessed with, and I remember just how much I love her writing. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai with warring gangs. I just feel like that sums it up. I think I rated this book 5 stars, actually. This is something I'm really excited about, and part of the reason that I wanted to make this video now is I kind of wanted to go on and assess things here at the end of the year, because I wanted to see if I could push through some of these, finish some of these series by the end of the year. And I think a duology is definitely doable, but I would have to reread this one. We have The Stolen Heir by Holly Black, which I'll be honest with you, wasn't my favorite. This is a new duology set in the same world as The Cruel Prince. I was not that enthralled with this. In fact, to me, it was just a massive step down from the Cruel Prince trilogy. I honestly did not believe the same person wrote it. Like, that's how disappointing this one was to me. But I think I was reading it too close on the heels of the Cruel Prince. So I think I'm going to give this one some time and probably reread it when the second book comes out. But since this is a duology, I feel like I can definitely say that I will commit to it and finish it out. The Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. Okay, let's get into this one. This is a sci-fi series. When I read this series, it was just a trilogy, and it has now been extended to 6 books when I picked this one up. Now it has been extended to 7. The reason that I stopped after that initial trilogy, first of all, is that it is perfect. There is no flaw in that original trilogy. But second of all, this switched up perspectives. This had multiple narrators. It had multiple different characters that we were getting points of view from. I did not like it because I love Darrow, who is the main character of this series. I would jump in front of a moving train for him. And so when we had 3 new perspectives that weren't him, that weren't my man, I got really upset and I just was not into it. But again, this is a good one to talk about in comparison with The Stolen Heir, because I read this immediately on the heels of that original trilogy, and to me they are definitely 2 different beasts. There's a big time jump. This is one I have been really intrigued by and I really want to get back to, and I want to reread the original Red Rising trilogy very, very soon, because I got caught up in all of the hype about Lightbringer when it came out a couple of months ago. I am just so in love with Pierce Brown's mind. Like, whenever I watch him in an interview, I'm just stunned, because I feel like he's the same type of nerd as me, and I feel like you can really see that in these books. These books are really mythology inspired and Roman history inspired, and I just think they're really fantastic. And every time I have watched an interview with him lately, I have thought about the fact that I need to return to this series, so I'm going to call this one a high priority. I don't know that I will finish it by the end of the year, because the 7th book has yet to come out, so I kind of feel like I want to wait until I know when that release date is. We have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I have no idea how long this series is intended to be, but I will read them all, mostly because of their absolutely stunning covers. These books are really cozy. There's not really a lot of high stakes action in these books. You're not really that worried about the main characters, which I really appreciate. Occasionally I'm in the mood for something kind of happy, kind of cozy, and this worked really well for me. I love the Fae. I love them so much, and I loved how the Fae were handled in this book. To me, they were very folklore inspired, and I think the series is going to have us travel around, which I think will also be really fun, so I'm definitely invested in this. We have Stephanie Garber's Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. This is one that I have only read 1 book in. This is the 2nd book. I loved the 1st book so much it swept me off my feet. 5 stars. I think it was one of my favorite books of 2021. I started trying to read the 2nd book at the start of this year because I felt like for sure I'm going to give it 5 stars, and I could not remember anything. So I just decided to go on and wait until the 3rd book came out. The 3rd book comes out towards the end of October, so I'm just going to do a binge read when that happens. But this is definitely a series that I intend to finish before the end of the year. I absolutely love Stephanie Garber's writing. Talk about cozy, talk about atmosphere. She really knows how to do it. And I feel like they're going to be my favorite books of the year, honestly. So I'm really excited to see how the series ends. Here it is, Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong, the first in an adult fantasy trilogy that is a retelling of Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. This was incredible. I almost gave this book 5 stars. There were some shortcomings to it, honestly, but this really had everything I want. It had a fight to the death, like a death game. I am always going to pick it up, honestly. I am always going to read a book where there's a game and people have to fight to the death. Always. And I feel like that was the most poorly done element of this story, actually, but it's a really well done retelling of Antony and Cleopatra, in my opinion. So this is one that I can't carry on with because the 2nd book isn't out yet, but definitely I'm going to. We have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is the last book in this trilogy. You can see that I'm trying. I'm trying so hard. This has been a disappointment to me on nearly every single level. Every book in this has been disappointing to me, and I feel like at this point I'm just forcing myself through this 3rd one. I bought a box set, and that is why I'm not DNFing this. I'm just going to give it my all, and I'm going to finish it out. But I was really, really disappointed in the 2nd book. And I feel like the 1st one was just okay. So this is one that I'm definitely going to finish, and possibly I'll finish it this month. But my gosh, I have been really disappointed by this. To me, of everything on my list, this is the most disappointing, honestly. These are YA thriller mysteries, and I have to say, I feel like the mystery is really strong. 9 times out of 10 in these books, the mystery is really interesting. The characters are just awful, in my opinion. I just hate the characters, and so that's really why I have really, really struggled with this trilogy. We have The Winter King by C.L. Wilson. This is a fantasy romance series. There are only 2 books out in this series. So The Winter King and The Sea King, you can see that right there. And I sadly believe the series is never going to continue. I think she has kind of moved on to other things. And it's a shame because the world is so wonderful. It's like based on the seasons. And I feel like she really has a gift with describing the world. To me, these are really interesting in terms of world building, even more so than in terms of the romance. But I think that's a real shame, honestly, that she's not going to continue on with it, which has made me not really want to commit to the series if I'm not going to get kind of the culmination of it, because they are weirdly interlocking. A lot of times you're reading a romance series and it kind of doesn't matter what order you read them in because each book is about a different couple. This did feel weirdly connected to me. I started with the second book and I stopped reading it to go back and read the first one. So I actually think I probably should have said this is a series that I haven't started yet, but I just love her writing. And I think C.L. Wilson has several other fantasy romance series, so definitely I'll check those out. But this one is kind of sad to me because it seems like the publisher has kind of given up on it. We also have the Twisted series by Anna Huang, which is a romance series. It's semi a dark romance series, I've seen people say. It's really not. The dudes are just really possessive and want to tell you what to do. That's basically the vibe here. I loved this first book. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And so I do have the other books in this series. I think there are 4 books in this series, and then she has another series that is semi-connected to this, or at least takes place in the same world, which I think will be really interesting. I love her writing, honestly, and I think the books are just really pretty. But this is, I think, the main romance series that I have and that I'm going to include here because I do actually own the books and I don't just have them out from Kindle. But if you're looking for a romance recommendation and you haven't already read these, I loved this. Loved it. Here's one I feel guilty about, and this is something about me that I have discovered, especially when trying to get this video put together. I will often stop a series with 1 or 2 books left. This is the Greenbones saga. I only have 1 book left. This is the end of the trilogy, Jade Legacy. I rated the other 2 books 5 stars. Frankly, they are my favorite books of the year. Like, blown away by them. And I am putting this one off because I really just don't want it to end. I don't want to leave the world. I don't want to leave the characters. I was obsessed with Jade City. If possible, Jade War was even better. So this is one that I'm kind of saving for a rainy day. I know that when I finish it, I will go into a book slump. So I'm kind of saving this for a rainy day. I'm possibly saving it for the winter because sometimes I just really want a long, chunky book when it's cold outside. So this is one I do think, though, I really want to prioritize. I really want to finish out this trilogy by the end of the year because I feel so sure that this one is not going to disappoint me. I feel like this is also going to get 5 stars from me, definitely. We have the Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I don't know if I am going to DNF this series or not. Part of me wants to say yes because this one was just okay to me and I feel like so much of it went over my head. This is another dark academia magical series and I felt like it was so cerebral and theoretical most of the time that it was very hard for me to get a handle on what was going on. But another part of me wants to say that I would finish it, especially if I see that the other books in the series are really well received. This one really took off. The second book, I think, really disappointed a lot of people. So this is one that's kind of up in the air. I'm going to keep it on my shelf for the time being, but I am not going to say that I'm committing to this one either way. We have the Dreamer trilogy by Maggie Stiefvater. Technically, this carries on from the Raven Cycle. The Raven Cycle is one of my favorite YA trilogies of all time, just in general, some of my favorite books of all time. And I think if you had told me when that series ended that I wouldn't be interested in getting more from the world, I would have just thought you were crazy. But frankly, I don't want any more from the world. And in particular, I don't want any more from the Dreamers. It's a shame because the character who this focuses on, Ronan, is easily one of the most interesting characters that you can read about. But to me, this book felt like a massive step down. I feel like I read this in 2020. And at the time, I felt really positively towards it. And I felt like it really carried on with the characters in an interesting way. But honestly, it just didn't hold the same magic for me as the original series did. And I think I'm going to DNF this one. It's also shocking to me just how little I hear about this. For this to be a continuation of a really massively popular series, I hear next to no one talk about this. And I feel like maybe a lot of people are like me and they were a little bit disappointed by this. I don't know. But I feel like I'm definitely not going to carry on with this. We have The Last Hours trilogy by Cassandra Clare. And this is, I would say, of all of those that I am in the middle of, 100% this is the top priority. This and Jade Legacy, I think, have to be the series that I commit to by the end of the year. Because if I finish this trilogy, I will not have just finished the trilogy, but I will have finished, I think, the last in a series that so far has like 16 books in it. Just kind of the overarching Shadowhunter series, which has been some of my favorite reading experience, honestly. Every time I have read a Shadowhunters book, I've at least said, wow, that was fun. I haven't been truly disappointed by any of the books. I have read the first book in this trilogy, but definitely it's one that I'm going to have to reread. And the other two books in the trilogy are really, really long. So this is one that I definitely need to commit to, and I feel like I want to do it before the end of the year. This has been such a great year for me in terms of reclaiming my reading life and just in general, reading for fun. And when I think about the most fun that I've ever had reading, the Shadowhunters books are towards the top for me, honestly. We also have Fourth Wing, which 100% I'm carrying on with. I loved this. I gave it 5 stars. I can't carry on with this one because the second book is not yet out. I feel like this is a series that I will probably do what I can to keep up with since it's become such a cultural phenomenon, which is great. I think I'll probably try to read the second book immediately when it comes out, the third book immediately when it comes out. I thought this was going to be a duology, I'll be honest. And now I've learned that it's going to be like a 6-book series. So on the one hand, I'm thrilled by that. On the other, I'm very intimidated because I don't think I will remember what is going on. We also have, just in general, the Vampire Chronicles. I've made it to book 6 or 7 of this series, and I feel like I quit while I was ahead. I feel like I could see the train about to go off the tracks when I stopped, and I don't really intend to finish it out. I think when I reread this, and I'm fully intending to reread it, I think I'll probably stop about book 6. I remember Vampire Armand just being so good, so I feel like I have to at least make it that far. But this is a really long series that definitely is a roller coaster ride. I've heard spoilers from what the rest of the series is about, and it is wild from start to finish. Most of it completely unbelievable. So this is one that I'm going to say I'm fine with DNFing, but I've read the majority of the books in the series. We also have the Gilded Wolves trilogy by Roshani Chokshi. I think I have read the first 2 books in this, not really sure why I never carried on with the third. This is historical fantasy that I think has a really good comparison point in Six of Crows. It's kind of a heist story, a found family, and I really, really enjoyed this. In fact, I might have given this 5 stars. This might have been one of my favorite books of the year that it came out. And Roshani Chokshi is one of my favorite authors. So I don't really know why I haven't finished this one out. This is another trilogy where I had 1 book left and for some odd reason just didn't finish it. If you have sat through this really long video, please get a cookie. I really had fun doing this. I think it's going to be useful to me. And that's really the main reason why I wanted to do it, is I wanted to have a space where I could list everything. And I would love for y'all to tell me in the comments down below series that you think I should prioritize, books that you think I should read first, because I'm kind of overwhelmed. Now that I've sat down with them, I feel really good. It feels like my ebook TBR is not that overwhelming, but my physical TBR definitely is. So I need to really do some thinking here. I'm happy with all of these series. I feel like I really have DNF'd as I've gone on. So there are a lot of things that I've read that just are no longer on my shelves, which is great. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.